No, this is JoeKingAudits, reviewing Piers Morgan's interview with Piers Morgan, with Jordan Peterson, and welcome to your precious climate.
With the Russians in effect. When I was over there recently interviewing President Zelensky, what I was struck by was everybody I met in Kyiv, the capital city, were utterly resolute. Don't give them an inch of our land.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to that because I don't know what the preconditions for peace might be. But I do know that naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win, I just don't understand. I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly?
Well, I guess a victory would be that the Russians retreated from Ukraine.
With Ukraine in ruins.
Right.
Well,
With
okay,
large parts of
fine,
it.
that's a hell of a victory. Like, I think Putin could manage that because I think he could tell his people, and I think they might buy it. It's like, we accomplished our objective. We devastated Ukraine and we kept it out of the hands of the West. And that's not great. It's not what we had hoped for, but it's better than the alternative. And I think they would buy that.
Fuck me, that's crazy.
And I think when Putin went into Ukraine, I thought a bunch of things, which I made a YouTube video about that. People criticized like mad. I thought, okay, well, what's happening here? Oh, I see. His end game for failure is that Ukraine is left in a smoking ruin. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a victory. So then he can lose with impunity.
Right.
So how can we win? We can't win against Vladimir Putin anyways, because you cannot win against someone you cannot say no to. Period. And we can't say no to Putin because we sold our soul for his oil.
Fuck me. See what I mean? They can just laugh. They can just laugh at you. They can just sit there with their fucking precious climate change. Just sit there and just laugh at you. You know, like.
And gas. And we did that to elevate our moral stature in relationship to saving the planet. And so here we are, facing a very dire winter, hoisted on the petard of our own foolishness and moral presumption. We're saving the planet. We'll see. I don't think so.
Where's the full interview, man? Come on, I gotta see that one. You can't do that to me. Visit leads to police being called. What? Don't tell me that. The police came. What do you mean the police came? Bullshit. Don't tell me that. Holy shit. The police gonna come after me as well. You can't fucking hide.
You went to a school, really interesting school, the Michaela Community School in North London, run by this fascinating head teacher, Catherine Burblesing, who runs a pretty tough school but has amazing results at this school. And as a result of you going, she got bombarded with hate from people. And she took it on head on, actually, and went, I'm sorry, we're going to keep inviting people with all different views, all different types of people. And that's going to include people like Jordan Peterson. She owned it and she was proud that you went to her school. Tell me about that visit. Well, what you think of her as well?
Well, people think of her school as tough and that she's this dragon lady. And that isn't what I saw. What I saw was that she was playing a very sophisticated game with her students. And games have rules. And if you don't enforce the rules, then the game doesn't play properly. And every game has a referee because someone has to enforce the rules. And she's a very, very sophisticated referee, and she's playing an unbelievably sophisticated game. And the students are so alert and on target. Their attention is so well regulated by themselves. Like, for example, when we walked into her classrooms, we walked into about 7, we were led around by 3 relatively small kids who were very articulate and together and attentive and polite and focused. When we walked into her classes, the students didn't turn their eyes away from their teacher to look at us. There was no buzz of conversation. They were just focused on their teacher, and their teacher was focused too. It's like we could walk in and the whole thing just continued around us, and that was really something to see. And fast-paced, man. The teachers were spitting out information as fast as I've ever heard anyone spit out information, and the students were reacting like just like it was choreographed.
And the truth is, it works. I mean, recently this school.
Yeah, well, that's annoying.
Yeah, right. It was annoying for those who immediately howl, "This is disgusting, these poor kids," and so on.
Oh yeah, those poor kids.
80% of the students achieve 4+ C or more in their GCSEs, a very
Yeah.
good result, despite being non-selective.
Right, it's a big deal.
A huge deal. And yet she gets castigated for it, which
Yeah.
says to me that my sort of gut feeling that we've just gone a bit soft in our
Well, it's
society.
annoying when
generally.
you help out the victims because then there's no one to be like narcissistically compassionate about them.
Oh my God, did you hear that?
So, and that's certainly the situation she's in. Yeah, it's quite amazing that she's managed this with kids who are a non-selected sample. And I asked her, well, how many kids do you have to
This is the first
expel,
time
let's
I've
say,
seen this.
for serious misbehavior? She said it's only been a tiny handful. And I said, well, how many kids can't adjust to the more rigorous pace? And she said, well, they can all adjust. And that's what I saw. I mean, I never saw a bunch of children, a group of children that were more focused and alert than I saw at that school. And it was
And
really
yet-
heart-rending in some sense.
And yet by you going there, people actually reported her to the police for a hate crime,
Yeah, well,
just by your presence in that school.
that's the problem with hate crime legislation. It's like, who defines hate? And I know the answer to that. Who defines hate? The people you least want to. So, you want hate crime legislation? You just better keep in mind who's going to define what constitutes hate. And then you think about the people you're enabling, these rat fakes, these people who didn't learn not to tattletale on their peers when they were children, who run to totalitarian authority to wield their resentful. Now that's all part of the legal code. It's like, well, we'll see where that goes. Well, we know where it goes. It goes so that, demented, half-wit, resentful narcissists can rat out Kate Erbelsing to the police.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's not good. Not at all. And who knows where it'll end up.
Fucking hell. Maybe this is like the awakening. Something's going on. I mean, people can't ignore Jordan Peterson, can they? I mean, you can fucking ignore me if you want, but you can't ignore Jordan Peterson. All you have to do is just think about it for a second.
Well, he's a lot more like everybody
I mean,
else. than
he
anyone
fucking
thinks.
taught me something.
The notion that he's Hitler or Stalin, that's just foolish. I don't see evidence for that at all. I mean, first of all, Hitler and Stalin were very singular types, and there's a bit of Hitler and Stalin in everyone. So, there's some truth in that. Maybe there's more in the typical Russian
A
leader
bit of
than
Hitler
normal.
in everyone? Really?
There's more than a bit.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, why would have Nazism spread the way it did? People think, well, that's all top down. It's not top down. There's a part of people that
I said this
all
fucking
these
is.
people who informed on Kate Erbelsing.
Well, didn't Goebbels?
Hitler didn't fucking tell a load of people to fucking kill loads of people. The fucking people kill loads of people. Yeah.
Goebbels say that the way to get vast numbers of people to go along with what you want to do is to terrify them.
Yeah, well, that you can do
hold
that.
a grip of terror over them.
Oh, yeah, but
And then in a way, that's what Putin's now doing with the Russian people, where he's going back now into a position of they're all trying to get us, they want to attack
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
they want to take us over. He's terrifying his people to rally support for what at the moment is a conflict he has started, which is not going the way he assumed.
well, the most, what would you say, the wisest commentators on totalitarian states, like Solzhenitsyn,
This is pretty genius.
And many psychological commentators, Jung was a good example of that, made a very straightforward case that you can't have a totalitarian state unless every single person is willing to lie about everything all the time. And you can think about that as top down because the leaders lie too. And they also enforce punishments if you don't lie. But then you can also think about it. The totalitarian spirit is replicated at every level of the society. And so in a truly totalitarian,
Police tyrants, council, people say get a job, looking down on homeless people. It's just constant mold of fucking lies.
state, husbands lie to their wives and parents.
I take crack. Yeah. Sue me. What the fuck? And you're there going, oh, you take crack. But it's just your fucking lies that is going, oh, that guy takes crack, oh my god. You know? It's your fucking problem, not mine. I've got the crack problem, you know, that's my problem. You know, that's I put that on me. But you put your problems onto me. You put your problems onto me as well. So I've got my problems and I've got your problems. And the guy above you's got like giving you his problems. And you're like, oh fucking hell, I'm gonna give a lot of people my problems now. And you're lying to yourself, you make your own fucking
state is actually the grip of the lie. And so and people will certainly go along with that. I mean we're seeing that emerge here with cancel culture. It's like lie,
yes,
or else.
yes.
It's like, yeah, well.
And the Russian people will be bombarded all the time with state media propaganda and will be buying into what Putin is saying.
Yeah.
How does this war end, do you think?
We're going to find out this winter. Well, I know what I would do in his shoes. I'd wait till the first cold snap and shut off the taps.
Right.
Well,
Because
of course he's going to do that.
He's got the control over the energy.
Of course he's going to do that. He's already warned the West with his insistence that maintenance problems were necessary and the pipelines had
Do
to
you
be
think
shut
he will
down.
use a nuclear weapon?
If necessary, he'll use a tactical battlefield weapon.
Even
Yes.
if it starts World War III?
It won't, probably.
Why? Because we wouldn't respond.
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it and get away with it, where does that end? Then you are into a hit.
Well,
anarchy.
look, there's a lot, you can get yourself in a situation, no problem, where there's no good outcome. We're trying to do that right now on every front we could possibly imagine.
Mm.
We can easily get ourselves in a.
It's like it's just saying like what the fucking power structure knows already. But people don't really fucking truly understand that, you know. Like there is no winner. You know, there's no winning this war. Like, you know, unless we fucking obliterate each other. So it's either you like fucking put up and shut up, or you fucking just blow each other up. It's that simple. We're
In a
fucked.
situation where it's
We
hell
can't do
this
anything
way
about
and
it.
hell
It's
that
not
way.
for us to do anything about it. There's no need for us to do anything about it. What will be, you know? And someone's going to have to make a decision. What will be, unfortunately. And, you know, we keep sacking our fucking politicians for having a party for COVID. But, you know, someone's got to fucking make that decision one of these days, you know?
Wait, that's highly probable.
But should the Ukrainians give the Russians anything? When I was over there recently interviewing President Zelensky, what I was struck by was everybody I met in Kyiv, the capital city, were utterly resolute. Don't give them an inch of our land.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to that because I don't.
I mean, you can't do all about it. You can't do anything about it.
know what the preconditions for peace might be, but I do have naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win. I just don't understand. I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly?
Well, I guess a victory would be that the Russians retreated from Ukraine.
Ukraine.
With Ukrainian runes.
Right.
Well,
With large
okay,
parts of
fine,
it.
that's a hell of a victory. Like, I think Putin could manage that because I think he could tell his people, and I think they might buy it. It's like, we accomplished our objective. We devastated Ukraine and we kept it out of the hands of the West. And that's not great. It's not what we had hoped for, but It's better than the alternative. And I think they would buy that. And I think when Putin went into Ukraine, I thought a bunch of things, which I made a YouTube video about that. People criticized like mad. I thought, okay, well, what's happening here? Oh, I see. His end game for failure is that Ukraine is left in a smoking room. Oh, that's a victory. So then he can lose with impunity.
Right.
So how can we win? We can't win against Vladimir Putin anyways, because you cannot win against someone you cannot say no to. Period. And we can't say no to Putin because we sold our soul for his oil and gas. We did that to elevate our moral stature in relationship to saving the planet. And so here we are.
Yeah.
So like what is saying now is people realized in the West that we were reliant on Russia for oil and gas. So we said we're going to have to try and find a way to not use as much oil and gas because we can't be in debt to Russia. So Russia went, well, fuck you then. You're not having any of it.
Facing a very dire winter, hoisted on the petard of our own foolishness
Welcome to your precious climate.
and moral presumption. We're saving the planet. We'll see. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it to me. And this is the most catastrophic issue here. Assuming that we're facing an environmental crisis of planetary proportions, which is not something I buy, by the way. Assuming we are, well, then I would imagine that you would put in place measures that would ameliorate that problem instead of exacerbating it. But all the measures you're putting in place are actually making the environmental problem worse. So how is that even vaguely acceptable? And I look at that and I think, oh, I see. It's just like George Orwell said about middle-class socialists 50 years ago. It's not that you love the planet, it's that you hate humanity. So, well, have at her, boys and girls, and we'll see what happens this winter. And it's very terrifying to me. I especially hear it, because your energy.
It's called humane for a reason because you're supposed to look out for number one, the main fucking main guy, which is us. Fucking idiot.
Prices have gone way out of control, and that's going to hurt a lot of poor people, and certainly around the world as well. The World Bank already estimated that we've put 350 million people into what they call food insecurity. 350 million. That's 3 times as many as the communists managed to kill. Maybe we can manage that in a winter, but the planet has too many people on it anyway, so that's just poor people.
Poor people. That's me. Talking about me.
I see you. Looking at that yellow bar thinking,
I mean,
have
fucking hell.
seconds always been this long?
Can't
Well,
beat this
it only
model,
takes
but
one of
fucking-
them to play your epic spin of the day
Questions,
at
huh?
PokerStars Casino.
So you'd be surprised. Like it's quite surprising how open and realistic.
Girls Schools Association.
Indeed.
Call it girls.
Well, good point. The thing is, it has been called that for as long as it's been in existence, and maybe we need to think about change of title. This is a topical issue and something that many schools are addressing, not just through thinking about pupils' next or how we call them in class, but also things like uniform and policies to make the children feel comfortable at school.
Yeah, let me just put it to you. As the father of a 5-year-old girl who's about to be 6 tomorrow.
That's a very
actually, happy birthday,
political.
Elise, if you
That's a
watch
very
it.
political way of saying it. Well, we've got to fucking, we've got to bow down to the fucking Let's change the whole fucking structure just because
I would like her to be known as a girl. I would like teachers to call her a girl, and other girls to be girls. When my 3 sons were at school, they were boys. I would like them to be addressed as boys because guess what? They were born boys, and she was born a girl. And what is happening is that teachers like you, with the greatest of respect, are buying into this frenzy at the moment that gender is now an offensive thing, that we can no longer call girls girls and boys boys. And I find that the most damaging part of this for children. Why are we confusing them with all this gender claptrap?
No, right, okay, so I don't think is a question of confusing anyone. Many teachers and schools will address children by their individual names. That's what we want, that the individuals are feeling valued in their schools. And teachers will continue to talk about boys and girls. What Natasha was trying to talk about was a context in which there is a high rate of suicide amongst those who identify as being LGBT, and that is higher than heterosexual children.
But that wasn't with respect. Let me jump in. I think that's a very convenient thing to put up into this debate to try and justify it. I've read everything that she said, and actually there was a passing reference to transgender children, of which we know are a tiny, tiny percentage of school populations in this country. And that's not to diminish that there may be issues there are, but actually the vast body of what she said, Natasha Devon, at your conference was directed generally about the use of the phrases girls and boys. She said, I would never walk into a room at an all-girls school and say girls or ladies because it's patronising. Well, what about an all-girls school? Isn't that patronising? Isn't it patronising that you call your own association the Girls' Schools Association? Isn't it patronising, with respect to you, Charlotte Avery, that I check your Twitter feed and all you do is constantly talk to girls? Here's one from the 30th of October. The sky's the limit for girls if we teach them to shoot for the moon. I totally agree with you. I want the sky to be the limit for my little girl. What I don't want is for you to be leading as president of the Girls' Schools Association, a name you haven't changed yet, even though you don't want people to be called girls. I don't want you to tell my little girl she's not a girl. Why don't you all just stop this nonsense?
Supporting girls in our schools. We're also aware, though, we've got children who don't necessarily identify as girls, and there's a balance to be struck. So we are absolutely supporting space for girls to be girls. I was talking yesterday on
I can't watch that. That's just impossible. It's not impossible, but it's strange. Law should solve the problem. I'm not going to fucking make more problems. Iceland's equal pay laws will fail. Anyway, that's like all I really wanted to talk about. Let's see the full interview. That was the full interview 5 years ago. I can't fucking talk about it. Jonathan Pearson reveals the truth of something. Jordan Pearson reveals the truth of the
You know, you always hear about the 1%, right? The evil one.
This is someone else's video of a shoot of me. Shouldn't really be piggybacking on these, but they're important subjects. It's not about the piggybacking, it's an important subject, and you said it better than me, you know, these videos say it better than me, so that's the only things I steal people's videos for, because it's an important subject. Like, I'm watching this Cairo guy, or whatever his name is, and he's like doing like homeless stunts, like pretending to be homeless and shit. And one of his things just made me cry. So I said thank you, because it should be shown how fucking much people are struggling, and it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse.
And they churn by. Done.
It's
Especially if they were like alcoholics and cocaine addicts. As long as they were broke,
there again. get demonetized.
About the 1%, right? The evil 1%. And they churn, by the way, because it's not the same people all the time. It's like all of you here are in the evil 1%. And you think, well, that's not very fair because I was really only talking about within my country. Well, that's convenient for you. You know, it makes it really, really convenient argument for you. It's like, well, all those other people, those foreigners, they don't count. If they're poor, who the hell cares? It's the Australians that matter. You know, and so no, that's a non-starter. You know, and by historical standards, you're doing a hell of a lot better than the top 1%. I can tell you that. I read a nice article by a coalition called Human Progress the other day, and they were comparing the typical middle-class person who lives now with Rockefellers in the 1919s, and say, well, would you rather
I
be
got
a
the
middle-class
Westchester
person
really
now
fucked up.
or Nelson Rockefeller in 1919?
No, just fucking.
And the answer seemed pretty damn clear
So
that,
sorry.
well, you know, if you were Nelson Rockefeller, then you would have been richer than anyone else. And there's something to be said for that stat, right? Because people do like to have more than others. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but it is one of the things that we like. And so you'd have that. You'd be richer than everyone else. But there'd be all sorts of things
People of the
that you
world have to say sorry.
now that
No,
Nelson Rockefeller wouldn't have had
I'm sorry.
a hope of purchasing, like the antibiotics
Well,
that he would have needed to stop his son from dying, for example.
I'm sorry.
You know, just as a start.
Okay.
So I think this complaint about inequality. Look, no one likes inequality exactly. You walk down the street. This is why I always get a kick out of people who protest. I'm against poverty. It's like, really, you're against poverty, and you think that's a unique enough attribute so that it was worth your time to make a sign that said that you were against poverty and show other people. It's like, I've never met anyone that was for poverty. You know, you walk down the street with someone who's pretty well off, you know, and they've got 1920 spats on and a bowler, and they're feeling pretty damn rich, and the Stockster certificate sticking out of their back pocket, and you know, there's a homeless person there, and they give them a good kick, and they say, the more poverty, the better. It's like, no. You know, when people walk down the street and you see homeless people, and they're often, homelessness is a complex problem. Like you think, well, homeless people are poor. It's like, yeah, man. That's like one problem they have out of 50. And like, I've worked with poor people, you know, in my clinical practice, poor in multiple dimensions.
I apologise, but I'll get out of on. I've got some coffee on. Yes, we've got some coffee left. And some cigs.
And many of them, you gave them money, they were just done. Especially if they were like alcoholics and cocaine addicts. As long as they were broke, they had some hope of living through the next month. But as soon as their unemployment check showed up, man, they were face down in the ditch 3 days later, right? Nothing but cocaine and alcohol with all their idiot friends for 3 days. And then they'd show up back in my practice saying, you know, God, I relapsed again. Well, what happened? Well, my money came in. It's like, yeah, money's really going to do you a hell of a lot of good. It just kill you faster than poverty. Now, not that there's anything good about poverty, but it's not like these are simple problems. You walk down the street, you see someone who's been an alcoholic for 20 years, and maybe they're addicted to methamphetamines as well, or maybe they're schizophrenic. It's like, it isn't unequal distribution of monetary resources that is the primary cause for that problem, and it isn't going to be some sort of straightforward redistribution that's going to fix it, because it's. I recently joined forces with Daily Wire. It's way more complicated than that. And so, and then the whole power thing too. It's like, look, I get it. I get the left wing issue, and I really do. And I think I get it better than the damn left wingers get it. Because, you know, most of the radical types, they follow Marx. They say, well, one of Marx's dictums was that capital tended to accumulate in the hands of fewer and fewer people. And that's right. That's true. Wealth and capital, income for that matter, but not only that. Whatever it is that you might like to have accumulates in the hands of smaller and smaller numbers of people. It's a principle that was discovered by an economist named Pareto, Vilfredo Pareto. And he pointed out something that had been pointed out in the Gospels, by the way, thousands of years earlier, which was, to those who have everything, more will be given, and from those who have nothing, everything will be taken away. The rule being, once you start to succeed at something, the probability that you will continue to succeed ever more rapidly increases. So there's an exponential function with regards to success, but there's also an exponential function with regards to failure. So failure and success aren't like this. They're like this. Fail, fail, die. Succeed, succeed, succeed ridiculously. Like it's this weird curve. And it's fun because it doesn't just characterize economics. It's a really it looks like a really fundamental economic law. I was actually quite shocked when I first learned about this, which was only about 15 years ago, because I thought most things were normally distributed. It turns out that that's not true. What people produce creatively isn't normally distributed. A small proportion of people produce most of what's of value. It doesn't matter what it is. And you know this, it's like, how many books does Stephen King sell? It's like half the books, right? And then there's the next guy after Stephen King, and no one even knows who he is, and he sells like 1/10 as many books as Stephen King. And then there's author number 50, and out of thousands and thousands of authors, and he's barely scraping by. And then there's the bottom 99.9%, and they can't make a living writing. And that's how it is. And it's the same with musicians. And it's the same with athletes. You know, if you look at number of goals scored, for example, in hockey, I'm a Canadian, so I'll use that, there's a small percentage of absolutely phenomenal hockey players, even in something as amazing as the National Hockey League or any professional sports league. You know, you have to be one hell of an athlete to make it in a professional sports league, and still you get this tiny group of superstars who are way better at it than anyone else. You know, and so there's this weird rule that as you get more, getting even more gets easier. And who knows why it is exactly? Partly it's practice, and it characterizes all sorts of situations. Like, it characterizes the size of planets. A small number of planets have almost all the mass. It characterizes stars the same way. It characterizes biomass in the Amazon jungle. It characterizes city size. A small percentage of cities have almost all the people. It's like, what's that? And then you go back 10,000 years, you look at a Paleolithic gravesite, and you see what people are buried with. And like, there's two guys there, he's just covered with gold, right? The gravesite is insanely rich. Everyone else has like a bone, and it's theirs, and that's it, you know? And so you analyze Paleolithic gravesites, you see exactly the same Pareto distribution. A small number of people are buried with all the wealth, and almost everyone else has none. And so it's this unbelievably deep proclivity of resources to distribute themselves unequally. And you know this too, because you play games like Monopoly, right? You've all played Monopoly. What happens when you play Monopoly? You all start out equal, right? Exactly 100% equal. And you all have an equal chance of winning, because it's basically a game of chance. Not entirely, because you can play stupidly, but you know, but you can only play so intelligently because you're at the mercy of the dice. And what happens inevitably is that some evil capitalist ends up with all the money and all the hotels and all the houses, and just like takes you out. And yet you play and you don't think, oh my God, you know, there's something fundamentally unfair about that. Or maybe you play non-competitive Monopoly, where after every round you redistribute the money
interesting. It's not really about the money, is it? It's about the infrastructure. Basically, got to make the infrastructure good enough, or else you guys have all the infrastructure as well. Infrastructure. It infers you have all structure. Is that how it works? Infrastructure. See? Exactly right, isn't it? It infers that you have all this. That some people have all the structure, but the rest don't.
Well, yet again, UK cops have been caught on camera acting for police. Believe it or not, some protesters dared to undermine the current thing.
Obviously, I know there's no issues you being here with the protests and stuff, and
Yeah.
I know you do quite a lot. The issue is the flags. I'll be perfectly honest.
So it's the flags again. It's the flags. Right.
I mean, they were carrying multiple flags, but one of them, oh my god, one of them had these colours.
You are causing a nuisance.
No, we're not.
I want you to leave, peacefully leave, and cut the protest short today because you've upset people.
Yeah, I'm upset every time I see an Extinction Rebellion clown blocking the road. You go and interrogate and arrest them because I'm upset.
You've also protest the Russian flags that you are displaying, as there's currently a war going on in Ukraine with Russia. That's a public order offence, and we've got offences that we have to deal with. And to do that, we need details, and we need all of your details to then carry on the
No, sorry, yet to decide what opinions I can express about a war under threat of arrest.
So, right now, I'm going to ask for all the details. We don't give them our power to arrest you.
No, you fucking don't. You don't have the power to arrest someone because someone else claimed they were offended. And that's why all these charges were eventually dropped, and Essex police is being sued. Russia arrest political dissidents. Proceeds to arrest political dissidents.
Don't give them our
It's okay when we do it. They were all imprisoned overnight. And unbelievably, the activists were not only charged with disturbing the peace, but with inciting racial hatred. What? Against who? They were protesting against a war, against the cost of living crisis caused by that war. What the hell has that got to do with race? And they weren't just displaying Russian flags to cause aggro. The demonstrators said they held up a 7-metre-long bunting which contained the flags of every nation in the world. Our government has sent over £2.5 billion of our money to prolong this war. Of course, we have the right to question it in public. How many times do the police have to be told? A person claiming they were offended by something doesn't give you the power to arrest someone. How many fucking times? Harry Miller won his case. The College of Policing came out after and clarified that the police can't take, quote, a disproportionate response to reports of a non-crime hate incident. That means, despite the absurdity of the existence of speech, which isn't a crime, but in Bizarro Clown World still represents a non-crime hate incident. You can't go around threatening, intimidating and arresting someone for basic free speech, for holding a flag that might offend someone, when anything can offend anyone. It's completely arbitrary. There are thousands upon thousands of Ukrainian flags being flown in villages, towns and cities across the entire country. You don't get to decide which flags are officially regime approved and which flags are offensive and therefore illegal.
The war. I'm still not finished. So right now you've got public order offences and we need to take the details. If you don't give us your details, then we're going to arrest you. That's all with that. So we're going to arrest you. Or you can arrest us and we'll go. It's for public order offence. You don't have to say anything that may harm a defence. You don't mention one question, some of which you later on in court. And anything you do say may begin evidence. That applies to all three of you, so I can ring your phone now.
Maybe the cops have spent just a bit too much time doing the Macarena at gay pride parades. Too little time learning and remembering what the actual frigging law is. Thankfully, as I said, these charges were dropped 4 months later, and those arrested and imprisoned are now taking legal action against Essex police. Don't forget, there was national hand-wringing over anti-royalist protesters holding up offensive signs and being arrested. Where was the outrage over this? There wasn't a single news report about it. No blue check mark on Twitter was bothered about it, and yet similar things continue to happen they don't have the resources to respond to car thefts, to burglaries. They have plenty of time to intimidate, interrogate, and arrest people for expressing anti-regime opinions. I mean, no wonder the real criminals have no respect towards or fear of you. It's beyond the pale, and it has to stop now.
It's pretty crazy. She looks fucking so happy with herself, isn't it? Okay, I'm rushing. Shut the fuck up, bitch.
Most people don't know this, but the best way to make money online in 2022 is not drop shipping Amazon FBA.
So public university is saying, okay, for us, Jordan Peterson is a line because of his misgendering of people and his anti-trans, so to speak, or some of his whatever you want to use it, homophobic, anti-left-wing rhetoric. And then another university.
Well, that's a typical example of exactly why it's very dangerous to let ideologues determine where the free speech line is drawn, because, in formulating that question, you used a whole string of unwarranted epithets that you drew from very badly conducted press interviews to characterize my viewpoints. And so just by formulating the question the way you did, you indicated how terribly dangerous it is to allow committees of ideologues to determine who should be allowed to speak and on what topic.
Well, let me ask you this then. First off, you're saying you don't see yourself as having spoken any anti-transgender rhetoric at all?
No.
Really?
It has nothing to do with transgender. It has nothing to do with transgender individuals. It has to do with compelled speech.
Okay.
The fact that it happened to involve a bill that involved transgender people was more, I would say, an accident. That was the issue that brought this to rise.
So you'll use the people's preferred pronouns then?
I haven't, and it would depend on how I was asked. It would depend on which pronouns, and it would depend on what I thought their motivation for requiring them was, and it would depend on whether they demanded it and all of that. So at the moment, I'm very disinclined to do it because now I have to do it. I'm legally compelled to do it in Canada, and that's enough reason for me to say no.
Well, it sounds to me like you said that you gave a lot of depends for someone who believes.
Yeah, that's for sure. You don't have a right. You don't have the right to determine how I address you.
Well, you don't have the right to deny their reality, to deny who they are, how they identify. Why? So let's see then.
I deny people's reality all the time by disagreeing with them. So, and they do the same to me. And you have every right to deny someone's reality. That's the whole basis of your ability to think independently, is that you get to define reality one way and other people get to define it another way. And then hopefully you negotiate a shared reality that you can both live in peacefully.
Well, that's my point.
That's a big specious argument.
Well, no, that's my point. Is because for someone who does talk about moral absolutism to some degree, in this case, there are a lot of depends. And for example, if a black guy said, "Hey, I'm black," you can just say, "No, you're not," and then can you use racial epithets or what he considers racial epithets? I mean, because people in trans community.
Can I? Of course I can. Whether I should or not is a different issue, and whether or not it should be illegal is a completely different issue. So whether I can and whether I should are not the same thing. No, it's not.
It's illegal to go out and if a black guy to call him the N-word, that would be illegal.
It's not illegal.
Harassment. It's harassment if you continually do it.
It's not illegal. It's not illegal in the United States.
Oh, okay. We agree to disagree on that one because
there's no disagreeing about it. It's not illegal.
Yeah. Well, go see how that works if you go on down to Spanish Harlem. Just be sure to upload it with a GoPro.
I didn't say that you should do it. I didn't say that it was right, but I did say it was legal.
Well, yeah, I know, and that's kind of the bait and switch that you pull, Jordan, quite a bit. Is you say, well, I didn't say it was legal, I didn't say it was right. What do you think is right? Let me ask you this. Let me ask Laser in. What do you think is right as far as how to gender somebody who identifies, who has been abused, has been a victim of hate crimes their whole life, and wants to be referred to by their specific pronouns? What do you think is right?
I think that your attempt to use hypothetical compassion for someone hypothetically oppressed is an appalling way to defend a compelled speech law.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
because think about what that does. It puts you completely in the driver's seat, doesn't it? You get to sit there and think, well, I'm a compassionate, wonderful person with essential mien of a saint, and this person who's addressing me is obviously entirely corrupt because they don't have the same moral compassion for the oppressed that I do. It's like, I'm not even going to engage in that. It's an appalling way of arguing. What makes you think that you're so compassionate? What makes you think that you've got all the right on your side?
Because I mean,
So you don't think there's anything dangerous about the government attempting to produce compelled speech legislation on the back of hypothetical compassion? You can't see any way that would go wrong?
well, I'll talk about you.
Then you're not thinking.
You just talked
That
about
sort of thing's gone wrong many times in the past, and you're using your mask of compassion and care for the oppressed to justify whatever actions you want to undertake.
All right, listen, I let you go here. You're talking paragraphs around in circles. Now you're misrepresenting me. I didn't say that at all. I didn't say that I don't see any problems with it. I think I'm the only one in this interview.
You haven't pointed out any problems with it so far.
Well, I'm also the only one who hasn't condemned compassion in any way, shape, or form. And
Compassion needs to be condemned in many, many ways because people use it as an unthinking marker for moral virtue, and it's not that at all.
Again, the government these are elected officials, and we elect the most qualified people for the job. You cannot elect someone who's the most qualified for the job and then decide that they don't have the authority that you've granted them as a
Yes,
voter.
you can. That's what a constitution is for.
That is what.
So yes, you absolutely can.
That's
The Constitution puts limits on the power of the elected representatives, and partly that's to protect the rights of minorities. And one of the most fundamental rights that minorities have is the right to free speech. It's absolutely unbelievable that the left, who hypothetically are standing up for the rights of the oppressed, are daring to challenge the supremacy of free speech, because it's been the fundamental weapon that people who are dispossessed have used against power structures since the beginning of the right itself.
These $60 Japanese
Yeah, but it's self-entitlement, then, isn't it? Self-entitlement. We do like to get ourselves in a mess, don't we?
Are taking the world by storm. Just apply them before bed and wake up feeling refreshed and clear as you peel off decades of built-up chemicals and toxins. The story behind these patches began when recent medical research uncovered hundreds of new modern-day toxins.
That guy's like, don't ask for more food. serious.
Cyril's mother or father, how would you categorize what you are?
I'm Cyril's parent.
Right. So you don't identify as male or female, right?
That's right. That's correct.
What do you identify as?
Non-binary, trans.
Right. Were you born male or female?
Piers, I've seen your interviews. I know you've gotten in trouble for asking these questions before, and you know that this isn't actually the right way to ask them.
I don't think the most difficult question in the world is asking a guest if they're male or female at birth. I really don't. You do. Doesn't mean I have to.
No, when I was born, I was assigned female, but that doesn't mean I was born a girl.
Okay, and then you had a transgender, you had an operation to become male or not?
So I'll remind you, because I know this is not the first time you've heard this, the genital configuration and surgical history of trans people is not actually the issue on the table. It's not the conversation that needs to be had.
But that wasn't my question. My question was simply, did you have the operation to change sex, as we would define it, not how you define it?
Okay, so if that's the direction that the conversation is going to go, we can ask you conversations about if one of your testicles hangs lower, or how you feel about circumcision in your own lived experience.
Well, let me help. Look, we're a family program, obviously. Let me help. I identify as a man. Susanna, I believe, unless things have changed in the last 20 minutes, identifies as a woman. Most people are happy to identify like that. I'm happy for you to identify any way you damn well see fit. It's fine. It's your business, right? What I'm more concerned about is your baby having absolutely zero identity until it decides what it wants to be. Can I call it it? What do I call your baby? Is it an it? What is it?
I use the pronouns they and their, the same pronouns I use for myself. I use my kid.
But they or there is a plural. It's not a singular thing. You're a singular person.
It has actually been used as a singular pronoun in English since the time of Chaucer.
Since the time of who?
Chaucer.
Oh, Chaucer, right. Yeah, but we've moved on a bit from Chaucer's language. I mean, otherwise I'd be saying to you, verily I say unto thee, I think your baby at the moment should be assigned a gender until it's old enough to work out if, like, its parent, I was going to say father, then nearly dropped myself in it, like his parent, can help it have that debate when they, so it's so confusing, when they get older.
All kids will figure out who they are.
Corey, I completely, with total respect, I completely understand that you do not want your child perhaps to be restricted by the social and cultural expectations of a gender identity. I get that, yeah, because there's lots of mums and dads who might not want their child dressed in pink or blue, or to have to play with certain types of toys and all the rest of it. What I don't understand is if your child has a clear biological identity, why you don't want to just factually have that on a form which can then allow your child to apply for a passport. The moment your child is not allowed to have a birth certificate, and also it leads you and your child into all sorts of difficult conversations about identity, as you said, all sorts of intimate questions that you might not want to answer or discuss, but inevitably are going to come out of this. Why not just allow your child to be male or female, depending on what they are at birth, but then decide for themselves how they want to act?
Decides for themselves. How old do you have to be before you decide if you're a fucking boy or a girl, really? It takes a long time. like about 5 degrees warmer in here than this downstairs. At least. It's too cold, man. What if it gets like near like what's it? What if it gets 5 degrees lower? And it's 0 degrees and it's fucking. Where it is 0 degrees. It's just my temperature's warm in my room, so it's 5 degrees. I'm not freezing.
So be treated.
Because operating in that way is operating from the expectation that not being trans is the default and being trans is weird. Or it's like it's the exception to the norm. I don't actually believe that it's the exception to the norm.
You have to book club.
I believe that people understand as common, but I don't actually believe that people who are trans
It's the first time I've
have
had to book club.
to be the only ones to figure out those parts of themselves and then go back and say the guest was wrong. I think that all kids should have room to say, you know, like, I like pink, I like bucks, I like, you know, I want to be called this, I want to be called that, I want to play certain games. And the problem is that the default, let's just assume that everyone's cis. Assume that if you have a vagina, that you grow. The problem is that our society also is disadvantaging all of those people.
But what happens if your baby gets to 4 or 5 and decides it wants to identify as a monkey? Then what?
Well, we'll probably have some important conversations about species and science and things that, you know, are appropriate for a queer.
Why would it be but taking your logic? Why would it be inappropriate for your child when they reach 4 or 5 to identify as a monkey? I mean, you
because
believe
they're
in the
a
right.
human being. They're a human being, and we're talking about gender. We're not talking about species.
Okay, so your baby can be a human being.
They are a human being. I am raising them as a human being.
Corey, we've reached a point of consensus. We both agree that your baby is a human being.
Great.
Listen,
I agree.
it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
23 minutes past 8. For a moment, that conversation strayed into areas I was slightly uncomfortable with.
I do not have
So,
low-hanging testicles.
any-
Rather than-
I don't believe we had to even
So
repeat
somebody
it.
probably.
Oh shit, what's the truth about PayPal?
PayPal has come a long way since the days of Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Since the halcyon days of the late 90s, once everyone's favourite, friendly and convenient payment processor, giving financial freedom to the little man. Well, now PayPal is a weaponised, vicious tool of the regime. In the last week alone, PayPal banned the Free Speech Union, a group that, clues in the name, exists to legally defend free speech. They banned Law or Fiction, a group of lawyers that fights against vaccine mandates. They banned GAG, a group that fights against the sexualization of minors. This is nothing really new. PayPal have been debanking people with anti-regime views for years. They previously banned left-wing news outlets that weren't sufficiently amplifying regime rhetoric. The reasons PayPal gives for banning people are, of course, completely spurious, proving that they're just satiating the demands of left-wing cancel culture mobs. In the case of the Free Speech Union, PayPal
banned
to
people.
questions as to why they banned the account by citing tolerance, diversity and respect for people of all backgrounds. What? What does that mean? Tolerance, diversity and respect for people of all backgrounds. Except those people who say words that we don't agree with. Fuck them. It's completely arbitrary, bogus nonsense. It's an insult to our intelligence. What's the solution? Well, don't use PayPal, obviously. Cancel your account and support alt-tech startups that are trying to create fair payment processor platforms that don't ruin people's livelihoods for daring to engage in wrong things. Rumble did it for video hosting and their growth is exponential, so why can't we do it for payment payment processing. Well, small problem, Visa and MasterCard enjoy a virtual monopoly on payment processing. Nearly everything goes through them. Back in 2019, a left-wing activist group tried to force MasterCard to hold a vote, which would decide who could use their services based on political opinion. Imagine that. You go to pay for your groceries. Sorry, your credit card has been declined. You misgendered a drag queen on Twitter. Your account has been closed. This is what I've been warning about for years. Deplatforming isn't about you losing your Twitter account. Cancel culture isn't about you losing your job. It's about losing your ability to even function in a normal society. It's about being denied the ability to have a bank account at all, to pay bills, to pay for a mortgage, to pay for car insurance, to pay for flights, to pay for food. Debanking is being fused with the cashless society. Governments are creating central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. This is the communist Chinese style social credit score in the West. It's here and it's only going to get worse. They literally want you debanked, destitute, homeless, starving on the street. That's the end goal of deplatforming, of cancel culture. The complete and total subjugation of human existence. There's an easy way to avoid it all, though. Just keep those dangerous opinions to yourselves. Just sign over your soul to the regime.
Really interesting way to put it in court. I think I'm being targeted for reasons of cancel culture. Depressive and anxious people think about this all the time.
My royalties from a random ad. And as you can see, my online business made me over.
I mean, I was talking to somebody just yesterday who was telling me that a child who's 12 now, has this check sheet for how do I feel. And this is a really happy child. But you're meant to be thinking all the time, like, how am I feeling right now? Am I, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy am I? How this am I? How that am I? How the other am I? This is all a terribly bad idea.
Well, it's clearly bad. Look, one of the things I learned when I was treating people who were socially anxious, I had a lot of anxious people in my clinical practice, which is hardly surprising because that's the kind of suffering that requires people to seek clinical intervention. So socially anxious people, when they go into a new social situation, think obsessively about how others are thinking about them.
Yes.
And so then they become self-conscious, often about bodily issues, but not only that. They might become self-conscious about their lack of conversational ability and the fact that they're not very interesting and the fact that they're being evaluated by other people. It's a litany of obsessive thoughts. And you might say, well, you could train people to stop thinking about themselves, but you can't stop people from thinking about something by telling them to stop thinking about something. But what you can train people to do is to think more about other people. And so one of the techniques that I used in my practice was, okay, now, when you go into a social situation next time, like we'd go through the niceties of introducing yourself and making sure they knew your name and get that ritualized so that it was practiced and expert and therefore not a source of anxiety. But the next thing is, your job is to make the other person that you're talking to as comfortable as possible, to pay as much attention to them. And so we know that the more you think about yourself, this is literally true. There is no difference between thinking about yourself and being miserable. They load on the same statistical axis. And so these kids that are constantly being tormented by 150 identities, so that's a front, not of freedom, but of utter chaos, and then asked to constantly reflect on their own state of emotional well-being and happiness is the surest route to the kind of misery that's going to open them up to psychogenic epidemics, let's say. The clinical data on that are clear.
And then you land into that, the idea that you may have been led to believe that because you're a not very feminine girl or a not very masculine boy, that means that really you are of the opposite sex. The fact is you're not, and no one around you is going to think that you are because you don't look like the opposite sex. and you become even more self-conscious, like self-consciousness brought you to this point, and now you're hyper aware that everyone around you doesn't think of yourself as the way that you've just presented yourself, and then you're watching for misgendering, and you know you're actually being told that it's a really terrible thing to do and that no one would do this unless they really hated you and they wanted you to die, like they want you to disappear, they want trans people dead, they want them gone, you know. I mean, that's what people say about me, that I want, you know, to cause a genocide of some sort. And I mean, like, when did I ever write such a thing? So what that is it's the feeling that you put all of your ability to care about yourself, understand yourself, define yourself onto other people and how they're looking at you, and they're not looking at you right, they're looking at you funny. So you are now out of control.
This incredible device removes 50 times more earwax than cotton swabs and lasts a lifetime. The internet.
I don't like her respond to that. Why can't people stop digging this hole?
Hey, 40 Sue here. The world is full of mysteries. What, if anything, is hidden inside Area 51? Why did McDonald's choose a terrifying psycho clown as a mascot? And just what the hell were they thinking when they made the final series of Game of Thrones? The subject of today's video is an enigma so perplexing that people have been hard at work trying to solve it for hundreds of years. Like all the best mysteries, it's a classic tale of buried treasure and booby traps, but one that comes with an intriguing plot twist. When it comes to finding hidden treasures, the hard part is usually figuring out where to dig in the first place. But in this case, we know exactly where the treasure trove is buried. The problem is, nobody can
Okay, that's cool, that's cool. Black Adam. Like it. What, when's it in cinema?
Obviously, I know there's no issues you're dealing with the protests and stuff, and
Yeah.
I know you're quite a lot.
What's this
The
again?
issue is just the flags on the traffic lights, which is something.
So it's the flags again. Right.
Fucking
Yeah.
ages,
You
man.
are causing a nuisance.
No, we're
I
not.
ask you to leave, peacefully leave, and cut the protest short
What?
because you've upset people.
For flags.
But this is crazy. In a Western country, you can't hold the flag of another nation. Jesus. Because people will take offense. Who cares? Let people be offended.
Shut up.
No, this is the opposite way, so.
It's weird how the police are focusing on issues like this instead of ethnic crime in the UK, which, from what I hear, is out of control. And in terms of the government over there, they should be focusing on issues like this, which are seriously affecting people. You are paying £52 per month. Your payments will be $1,248 per month. That gives you an idea of the rapid increase in energy prices in the UK, and it's going to be a very tough time this coming winter for many people in the UK. And by the way, that account was with British Gas. Now we've got some SJWs here, again in the UK, losing their mind and yelling at a baby. Check this out. No, man. No, man. You are disgusting. You and the thing standing next to you. I think raising this child to believe in males and females is the right way to go. As I think 90% of the general public also thinks. Falling into this minority thinking of acting like there are all these types of genders and using pronouns and all this stupid stuff. General public isn't on board with that. One of the women cursing at the baby and the father in the viral video has been identified as Carly Mae Kavanagh, who calls herself a journalist. She says she works at the House of Commons as the top policy advisor for the MP for Brighton, Lloyd Russell Moyle. Interesting. Interesting indeed. Now let's finish up with this. Hope you're having a good day as always. And as I always say, get the hell out of my stinking house.
Together, we can find a child by signing up for free wireless.
Okay, that is pretty crazy.
What do you want to get? Ice cream. Chocolate? Yeah. Let's go, honey.
3.3 million likes. I think that's a bit too, this is a bit too far, man.
Together, we can find a child by signing up for free wireless.
I'm selling wireless fucking. Cry. Fucking hell, cries. It's gonna make me cry. Watch this, about make me cry again.
arithmetic of American population